Today we are going to read this particular prose, which is an excerpt from K Narayan's autobiography, My Days. So first we will read about the author. K Narayan was born in 1906 and he expired in 2001. He is one of the three leading figures of early Indian English fiction. The other two are Mulk Anand and Rajaram. So K Narayan was a prolific writer whose writing career spanned over 60 years. Narayan has authored over 20 books. His novels, beginning with Swami and Friends, which was published in 1935, are set in Malgudi. So you may have seen there was a very famous TV serial known as Malgudi Days. Okay, and based on this fictional place Malgudi, which is also located in South India, this entire story revolves. So, credited for bringing Indian literature in English to the rest of the world, Narayan has won many prestigious awards, including the Padma Vibhushan Award and the Sahitya Academy Award. Now about the text. The present extract is from K Narayan's autobiography, My Days. Here Narayan describes with his characteristic quaint humor how as a young man he went through a phase of love sickness. Any girl who looked at him became his sweetheart, till someone else took her place. It did not matter if a girl was pretty or ugly, young or middle-aged, brown or white. But these were only bouts of infatuation, and the real thing happened when he fell in love with a girl while he was staying with his sister in Coimbatore. The social customs which prevailed then didn't permit him to approach her. Narayan describes how he made a bold announcement for his love to the girl's father, who was indeed a friend of Narayan's family. There were obstacles in the form of horoscopes, in which the girl's father was a firm believer. I hope you are aware of the concept of horoscopes. Horoscopes are traditionally, the charts which are made based on the people's time of birth. So it is believed that based on your time of birth, the stars determines your fate. So to get married, your horoscope should be compatible with other people to whom you are getting married. So this is the concept of horoscope. So horoscope in India plays a very important role in case of arranged marriages. So there were obstacles in the form of horoscopes in which the girl's father was a firm believer. Narayan went through his period of gloom and depression. Gloom means sadness. And finally, thanks to an astrologer who recommended that the marriage could take place, Narayan was married to his beloved with all the pomp and show and gifts of an Indian wedding. Now we'll read the text. Sighing over a pretty face and form seen on a balcony or from across the street, or in a crowd longing for love, in a social condition in which, at least in those days, boys and girls were segregated and one never spoke to anyone but a sister, I had to pass through a phase of impossible love sickness. So in this first sentence itself, he tells that he was passing through a love sickness, and that too at a time when boys and girls were not interacting too much like today's. Okay, you have co-ed colleges and schools, so it was not at all a custom at that time. Perhaps the great quantity of fiction I read prepared my mind to fall in love with all the sunrise, all one-sided, of course. So he says that R.K. Narayan was reading, he was consuming a lot of literature, fiction in the form of novels and stories, and most of them were love stories. So he was greatly influenced by his reading, and as a result, he was constantly falling in love with anyone, love with all and sundry, that is everyone possible, all one sided. So all his love was one sided because he was the one who was reading all the stories and getting influenced. Any girl who lifted her eyes and seemed to notice me became at once my sweetheart, till someone else took her place. It should be took her place. Thus, I had become devoted to a girl in a green sari with a pale oval face passing down our street when we were living at Bojana Lines. She lived in the next street, the sister-in-law of an engineer, and I would have missed anything in the day rather than miss a glimpse of her. So, he fell in love at once with this lady, this girl who was wearing a green sari, and she was a sister-in-law of an engineer. And I would have missed anything in the day rather than miss a glimpse of her. So, he was totally infatuated with her, so much so that he could miss anything, but he would wait to have a glance at his beloved. Sometimes I followed her quietly, like a slave, until she reached her gate and disappeared into her house without bestowing a single glance in my direction. So, sometimes he would silently follow this girl, and the girl was totally oblivious. She never knew that this boy was following her. I longed for some engineering business that might warrant a visit to her brother-in-law, and then a gradual development of acquaintance. So, he wanted to meet this girl, talk to this girl. So, what are the pretext? He thought, okay, all right, let me do something close to engineering so that I will have a chance of visiting the brother-in-law of this girl. And then a gradual development of an acquaintance, the relationship maturing until I could freely propose to her a La Victoria Cross or Marie Corelli. I was obsessed with her night and day, and I had no doubt that she would receive the impact of my thoughts, as Marie Corelli had taught me to believe that true love recognized no boundaries or barriers. So, he was reading all these authors, okay, all this text, and he was greatly influenced, and he was trying to relive, he was trying to bring it to his real life, whatever he was reading in his fictions. I lost sight of this girl suddenly, but found another, a little farther off, standing on the terrace of her home, drying her hair. So, suddenly he lost track of this girl, and never mind, he got another girl. So, he was following that girl then. And how did it happen? The girl was standing on the terrace means the rooftop of her home, drying her hair. I noticed her at first on my way to the college, and then looked at her constantly on the way to and from. Sure enough, she would be there, a squat, lumpy girl, but I loved her nonetheless. So the girl was short and lumpy, that is, she was well built, but anyway, he liked her. I think she was a flirt in her own way, ogling at every passerby, not necessarily only me. So, R.K. Narayan also says that this girl was also interested on almost everyone who was passing her way, because these are young men and young women, okay. So, she was a flirt in her own way, ogling at every passerby. Ogling means to look at somebody of the opposite sex with a lascivious behavior. I lost interest in her soon and bestowed it on another girl to Maharani's college. So this is the second girl he has talked about, and now Very soon he loses his interest on this girl and he finds the third one. This girl was going to Maharani's college, who used to give me one-sided and unspoken, who used to give me a smile and pass on. So this girl would sometimes smile at him. All this love for someone was necessarily one-sided and unspoken. But it made no difference. It gave me a feeling of enrichment and purpose. So even though his love was one-sided, but it gave him a sense of purpose. Among the inner circle of the friends, we always discussed girls and indulged in lewd jokes and enjoyed it all immensely. Lewd jokes means jokes which are of bad taste. Okay, but they were enjoying all these things. The blind urge to love went to fantastic lengths. I even fell in love with a lady doctor who had come to attend my mother because she spoke a few words to me whenever I greeted her. So this is the fourth. He fell in love with a lady doctor. So of course, this lady would definitely be much elder than him, but that didn't stop him from loving this girl, this doctor. Whenever I greeted her, she was a British lady, well past middle age. So she was a middle-aged woman, stout and married. But I saw great possibilities in her and read a significance in every glance. Love, especially one-sided, can know no bounds, physical, racial, of age or distance. So this is his belief, that love, especially if it is one-sided, it will have no bound of physical, racial, age or distance. My most impossible infatuation was for a pen friend I had in England. So Narayan even had a pen friend, in older days. It's not very popular nowadays. So sometimes you will get acquaintance with some other people and you would have never met them. So usually this used to happen through some magazine. Okay, so in magazine people will write that I want to make a pen friend of with a person from another country. I am from this particular place, so this is my address. And if someone who is willing to interact and know about them, they would simply write letters and interact with each other. So this is the concept of pen friends or pen pals. So he made a pen friendship with a person from England, and we exchanged letters every week. So every week they were exchanging letter. She sent me her photograph and I sent her mine. I kept her photo in my breast pocket and hoped she did likewise with mine. 5,000 miles away, even if I wished to reach her, it would mean a piano voyage of 4 weeks. So I wrote impassioned love letters which she rejected outright. She wrote back impersonal letters describing a holiday in Brighton or her latest collection of stamps. Although she protested against the tone of my letter, she never stopped writing, and that seemed to me a hopeful sign. I continued to send her my unmitigated love in every letter. Unmitigated is unstoppable love in every letter. So whatever the girl was writing, he would always make it a point to write a love letter, and treasured her cold, impersonal replies and the scent of her stationery for years until I was married, when I threw them over the wall. So, and he was preserving all her letters, okay, until and unless he got married. Okay, so here something you should learn: and treasured her cold, impersonal replies. Cold is something in English we use to mention anything which is negative. Okay, so it is not warm. Okay, so it's cold. So in English culture, cold is never considered to be something positive. Okay. After the false starts, the real thing occurred in July 1933. That means after the false starts, that means all these beginnings had no ending. So in July 1933, I had gone to Coimbatore, escorting my elder sister, and then stayed on in her house. There was no reason why I should ever hurry away from one place to another. I was a freelance writer. So by this time, R.K. Narayan was a writer, and I could work wherever I might be at a particular time. One day I saw a girl drawing water from the street tap and immediately fell in love with her. Of course, I could not talk to her. I learned later that she had not even noticed me passing and repassing in front of her while she waited to fill the brass vessels. I craved to get a clear, fixed mental impression of her features, but I was handicapped by the time factor, as she would be available for staring at only until her vessels filled, when she would carry them off and not come out again until the next water filling time. I could not really stand and stare. Whatever impression I had of her would be through the side glance while passing the tap. I suffered from the continually melting vision. The only thing I was certain of was that I loved her, and I suffered the agonies of restraint imposed by the social conditions in which I lived. The tall headmaster, her father, was a friend of the family and often dropped in for a chat with the elders at home while on his way to the school. So, this girl with whom he has developed this kind of infatuation, her father was a headmaster of a particular school. So what was he doing? The tall headmaster, her father, was a friend of family and often dropped in for a chat with the elders at home while on his way to school, which was a corner of a street. The headmaster's daughter, and the school were all within geographical reach and hailing distance, but the restraint imposed by the social code created barriers. So in those times, as I told you, men and women could not mingle freely. So there were social norms. You cannot just go and talk to a girl. Okay. I attempted to overcome them by befriending the headmaster. So he thought, okay, let me become a friend with the headmaster, the girl's father. So the girl's father, the headmaster, was a book lover and interested in literary matters, and we found many common subjects for talk. We got into the habit of meeting at his school after the school hours and discussing the world, seated on a cool granite payal. A payal is a place, okay, a elevated place where people sit, especially in front of the house, a projection of the veranda. Payal in front of a small shrine of Ganesha in the school compound. One memorable evening, when the stars had come out, I interrupted some talk we were having on political matters to make a blunt announcement of my affection for his daughter. So all of a sudden one day, he just told that he is in love with his daughter. He was taken aback. That means he was surprised, but did not show it. In answer to my proposal, he just turned to the god in the shrine and shut his eyes in a prayer. No one in our social condition could dare to proceed in the manner I had done. So, the author, Narayan, knows it very well that what he has done is outrageous. Nobody would have done it at his time. There were formalities to be observed, and any talk for a marriage proposal could proceed only between the elders of families. What I had done was unheard of, but the headmaster was sporting enough not to shut me up immediately. Our families were known to each other, and the class, community, and the caste requirements were all right. So it was one good thing for him, because at that time it was quite unheard of to have marriages within different communities or even class or caste. So he just said, if God wills it. So what did he say? A non-committal reply, if God willing, then let it happen, and left it at that. He also said, marriages are made in heaven, and who are we to say yes or no? So again, he makes it very clear that he is not interested. If at all it has to happen, we'll see. After this, he explained the difficulties. His wife and women folk at home were to be consulted, and my parents had to approve, and so on and so forth. And then the matching of horoscope. This last became a great hurdle at the end. He came down to a practical level one day by asking me what I proposed to do for a living. Luckily for me, at about that time, a small piece that I had written, how to write an Indian novel, lampooning Western writers who visited India to gather material. Lampooning means making satire. Okay, had unexpectedly been accepted by Punch. Punch is a very popular magazine, and brought me 6 guineas. So as a fees for his writing, he got 6 guineas. Guineas are actually gold coins of that olden time. This was my first prestige publication. The editor rejected everything I sent him subsequently, so it was the first and last that he published in this very reputed journal called Punch. And it gave me a talking point with my future father-in-law. So he could impress his father-in-law with this one particular writing. I could draw a picture of my freelance writing for London papers and magazines and explain to him that when my novel was finished, it would bring in income all my life and 50 years after. So he was just saying about the royalties of the books that he had not even written at that time. So he said that he is going to be a very famous writer very soon, and all his writings will fetch a lot of money. And not only that, even after his death, 50 years after that, his nominees will be getting all the money. This is how and what it happens after you write a book. So he listened to me with apparent interest, without contradicting me, but off and on suggested, I am sure if your father used his influence, he could fix you in a government job at Bangalore. Won't he try? So he was not very much convinced. His prospective father-in-law was not very much convinced about his writing career. So he was looking for some permanent kind of settlement with a good and steady flow of income. And what could have been best other than a government job? So he was suggesting that maybe if your father tries, he could fix you up in some government job. This always upset me, and I immediately explained my economic philosophy, how I spurned the idea of earning more than was needed. So the author did not like it. R.K. Narayan did not like, and he said that he believes in this idea that you should earn only as much as you need, which would be 20 rupees a month, or with a wife 40 rupees. And I expected my wife to share my philosophy. So he said that with 40 rupees this is sufficient, and he also believes that his wife will also agree to this. Not a very politic statement to be bewildered and hesitant father of a girl. So he later understood that this is not going to that this was not a very good statement that he made, because no would-be father-in-law or father of your fiancé will like this kind of a statement, because they would expect that the daughter whom they are giving to this particular man will take care of her in all possible way. But I became headstrong in my conviction. So he was determined. Headstrong means he was determined in his conviction, in his belief. However, while it distressed the gentleman, it did not materially affect my progress towards matrimony. So this girl's father was not very happy, but anyway, that did not stop young R.K. Narayan from imagining whatever he was imagining for his marriage. What really mattered was not my economic outlook, but my stars, that is, the horoscope. My father-in-law himself, an adept at the study of the horoscope, had consultation with one or two other experts and came to the conclusion that my horoscope and the girls were incompatible. So it was not matching, the horoscopes were not matching. My horoscope had the 7th house occupied by Mars, the 7th house being the one that indicated matrimonial aspects. The astrological text plainly stated that Mars in the 7th house indicated nothing but disaster unless the partner's horoscope contained the same flaw, in case in which two wrongs make one right. So the condition was that the same kind of horoscope should be there for the bride as well. The next few weeks were trying period for me. So it was very difficult period for K Narayan. The headmaster would have none of me. The headmaster will not listen to him at all. In very gentle terms, he expressed his rejection of me as also his resignation to such a fate, since he seemed to have been secretly in my favor. So this gentleman really liked this K Narayan, but because the horoscope did not match, so he was also sorry. I lost the taste for food and company, so it was very difficult. So K Narayan even lost his taste for food and company. That means he was keeping himself to himself. He was getting desperate and lay sulking in a corner of my sister's house. Sulking means making complaints, okay, to himself on a gloomy easy chair. My mood was noticed by others with sympathy. So everybody in the family knew and they thought that, oh, this is so bad. Okay, he is going through a very tough time. I think I enjoyed a certain amount of self-dramatization and did all that one does when crossed in all hopeless love. So he also knew that what he is doing is actually overdoing or amount of self-dramatization. So he was making a big scene. I avoided going in the direction of the street tap. I avoided the headmaster and his school. Late in the evening, when it became dark, I went out for a brisk walk with my head bowed in thought, looking neither left nor right, but totally wrapped up in my own gloomy reflection. Gloomy, sad. Just enough initiative left to smoke 2 gold flake cigarettes and return home. So what he would do, he would just secretly go for a walk, smoke 2 cigarettes and return home. My sister, being my hostess, tried to cheer me up in various ways. My pensive pose, pensive means thoughtful, pose is the gesture, got on her nerves. So it was too much irritating to his elder sister. At this period, I remember writing a play. It kept me busy all the afternoon. The play was called The Home of Thunder, a frightful tragedy in which all the principal characters are struck dead by lightning on a tower open in the skies. The play ending with a clap of thunder. It was a highly philosophical play examining the ideas of love, resignation and death, the writing of which diverted my mind to a great deal. I had great hope for its future and in due course sent it round to all kinds of producers and directors in every part of the civilized world. I had forgotten all about its existence till a few months ago when David Hyman's office discovered and returned the manuscript while clearing out the old papers. So he wrote a play out of his sadness, and the play was also too much frightening, where all the principal characters, main characters, die out of thunderstruck. And he totally forgot until some time back a particular producer returned the manuscript to him. The evil of my stars soon became a matter of discussion among the headmaster's astrological crew. So everybody was talking. He sought me out and sent me here and there to meet his colleagues and talk it over with them and bring him their opinions and conclusions. Finally, he sent me along to meet an old man living not far from us in the back of the coconut garden. His name was strangely Chelappasar. So he was sent to a person called Chelappasar. I don't know why. Perhaps he was a retired teacher and he was said to be an expert. So Chelappasar was an expert. I went to his house and explained my mission. He snapped at me. What do you want me to do? Am I a Brahma to change your stars? He looked angry for some inexplicable reason. So this person said, what do you think I can do? I cannot change your fate. Go and tell the headmaster one thing. I don't care whether his daughter gets married or not. I'll hold on to my views. I have spoken to that man again and again, but still he is full of doubts. If he knows better astrology than I do, he should not trouble me like this. If he listens to reason, he should go ahead and fix a date for the wedding. That's all. I see no harm in it. He hasn't noticed the moon's position in his daughter's horoscope, which neutralizes the Mars. But the man expects me to give him a guarantee that Mars will not harm his daughter's life. I can give no such guarantee. I am not Brahma. He raised his voice to a shrieking pitch and repeated, I do not care whether that man's daughter is married or not. So, this Chelappasar was an expert in astrology and he was perhaps giving all this opinion to the headmaster. But the headmaster was also not convinced. So, the headmaster sent this K Narayan, the author, the present author, to have a conversation with him. And then he said that, okay, if he wants to overlook certain things in the horoscope, he is free to do that. And anyway, I am not bothered whether the girl gets married or not. In spite of all these fluctuations and hurdles, my marriage came off in few months, celebrated with all the pomp, show and festivity, exchange of gifts and overcrowding that my parents desired and expected. So finally he got married. So this is an excerpt from this particular autobiography, that how K Narayan as a young man, he was totally into love with each and every girl that he would come across, and finally he settled for one whom with lot of difficulty and cajoling, finally he was able to get married. Okay, now go through this particular text once again. You have the glossary of the difficult words. So if you have any difficulty in understanding any of the words, you can find the meanings over here. So let's call it a day. We'll meet again in the next class.